Hello there, Prematriculants. Welcome to Educate. In this video, we'll be doing the biological terms under the section of biodiversity of microorganism. It is my strong recommendation that you watch my previous videos explaining virus, bacteria, and all the microorganisms concepts. Today, we're now going to wrap it up with these 18 biological terms. Remember that the instruction will come here and say to you that you must answer these questions by providing one biological term or one word that matches the description provided. So let's start with 1.1 in this case. So you can see 1.1, it says a single-celled organism. Remember that when you say that an organism is single-celled, it simply means that it consists of only one cell. So we have got a single-celled organism. It has got only one cell in its body. And we say that organism, it is unicellular. So basically, the number of cells can determine whether an organism is unicellular or it is multicellular. Okay, so when you say unicellular, it means that it has got only one cell. But when you say multicellular, it means that that body is made up of multiple cells or many cells. For example, as us humans, we are multicellular organisms because we have got millions and billions and trillions of cells within our body. So, but if you take a bacterium, for example, bacteria are actually unicellular. It's because they've got what? It's because they've got only one cell that are making up their body. Now let's go to 1.2. An organism that does not have a true nucleus. Remember that basically the presence of a true nucleus, or the presence of membrane-bound organelles. Okay, if you don't understand that term, just use this one. Basically, when an organism does not have a true nucleus, we say that it is prokaryotic. So we've got two terms that we have. We've got prokaryote, we've got eukaryote. When we say that an organism is prokaryotic, it means that in its cell, the nucleus, it is not really a true nucleus, or it does not have a nuclear membrane. Right, but when you say that it's a eukaryote or it's a eukaryotic, it simply means that there is a true nucleus within the cell of that organism. For example, when you look at the bacteria, one bacterium does not have a true nucleus. Okay, it has got a nucleoid. So basically, that one is a prokaryote. So basically, that organism is known as a prokaryote. But once the organism has a true nucleus, for example, as humans, our cells have got true nuclei. That's why we say that we are eukaryotes or eukaryotic. And then now they say we have got an outer protein layer. So the outer protein layer, that does what? That encloses genetic material of a virus. Remember that the structure of a virus is the simplest. It has got just this outer envelope. And then inside the envelope, remember that we have got this protein coat, or it is known as a protein layer. So this protein coat, and then that protein coat, it is actually enclosing the genetic material. It is enclosing the genetic material. Remember, genetic material can be DNA or RNA. So basically, when you're talking about genetic material, we're referring to the DNA or RNA. So now, what is the name of this protein coat that is surrounding, or that is enclosing, or that is protecting the genetic material, or the genetic material of a virus? We say that it is known as a capsid. So they can say it's a protein layer, they can say it's a protein coat, but it's made up of proteins and it encloses the DNA or the RNA, or you can say the genetic material of a virus. That is known as a capsid. So we're going to write that as one term or as one single term, and the term is going to be capsid. So this is a capsid. Then we go to 1.4. 1.4 now says a virus that attacks bacteria. So remember that we have got different types of viruses, but one of them, it is able to attack a bacteria and kill it. So, you know, viruses and bacteria kind of have a grudge, or they have got a beef at some point, but a virus always wins. So there is that specific type of virus that is able to attack and do what? And kill certain type of bacteria, okay? And that is known as a bacteriophage. So the virus has got a name, the bacteriophage, because it's able to kill bacteria. So it can also act as an antibiotic kind of, because it's able to destroy bacteria. So it is very important to have bacteriophage virus basically we can use a virus to kill bacteria. Let's just say maybe you have got a disease that is caused by bacteria, okay? Let's just say you've got a cholera. Cholera is caused by a bacterium, right? So basically, if I bring a bacteriophage and I inject it into your body, that bacteriophage, that virus known as a bacteriophage, it will be able to kill the cholera, the cholera bacteria, and then you'll be back to normal. So as much as viruses can cause diseases in us, we can also use some viruses to be able to heal the diseases caused by bacteria, because the bacteriophages are able to kill and attack bacteria. So now they say 1.5, a lack of a cellular structure in an organism. So we're talking about an organism that does not have a cell at all. Okay, so an organism that does not have a cell, it is known as a what? It is known as acellular. So we use the term acellular. Please don't confuse this one with unicellular. Remember, acellular means that it does not have a cell at all. Unicellular means that it consists or it contains only one cell. And then multicellular, it means that it has got many cells. But when you talk about an acellular organism, it is the one that lacks a cellular structure. It does not have anything, doesn't have a cell basically. So that is known as a what? That is known as an acellular organism. Then we go to 1.6. It says an organism that causes diseases. Basically, remember that when we talked about microorganisms, we said some of them, they're able to cause diseases. For example, the coronavirus, it causes COVID-19. Okay. For example, the HIV virus, it causes AIDS. For example, let's just take, for example, the Vibrio cholerae, it causes cholera. For example, Plasmodium vivax, it causes malaria. So those microorganisms, they're also able to cause diseases. But basically, in general, we all refer to them as pathogens. Okay, so pathogens are those those microorganisms that are able to cause disease. So it's known as a pathogen. You can sometimes refer to them as germs. Basically, remember that when talking about germs, we're talking about those microorganisms that cause diseases. But for this life sciences, we're gonna use pathogen. So when you say that an organism is pathogenic, it simply means that it can be able to cause disease. Then 1.7, it says an organism that has got a true nucleus. This one we've already done the opposite of it. 1.2, we say that if an organism does not have a true nucleus, we say that it is prokaryotic, or it is a prokaryote. But now that an organism has got a true nucleus, for example, us as humans, our cells have got true nuclei inside us, right? So we say that we are eukaryotes, or we are eukaryotic. But in right English, I'm going to use the word eukaryote. So a eukaryote is an organism that has got a true nucleus. Then now 1.8, an organism that can be divided into two identical parts. So basically, some of the organisms, you are going to actually do this topic in detail when you do biodiversity of animals. But if you can be able to divide an organism into two identical parts, for example, a human being, you can cut a human being in half and you can obtain two identical parts in a human being. All right. So we say that organism, it is a symmetrical organism. So for now, we're going to use the word symmetrical. Okay, English. I don't know if I'm spelling this correct, but it's a symmetrical organism. Or basically, when you do biodiversity in animals, it's probably going to say it has got a bilateral symmetry. But for now, let's use the word symmetrical. A symmetrical organism, it is just an organism that you can divide into two identical parts or two identical halves. Okay, for example, if you cut a human in half from the head, you can divide a human into two identical parts. One part will have one hand, one other part will have another hand. The other part will have one leg, the other part will have one leg. So it's more like they're identical, they're the same. So that is symmetrical. Then we go to 1.9. It says the grouping of organisms according to their similarities. Remember that also in grade 10 you've already learned that for us to have these 5 kingdom classification systems, the scientists actually looked at the similarities between different organisms. For example, if we take a human being and we take a lion, we are all belonging to the same kingdom Animalia. Because of what? Because we have got certain similarities. So that whole grouping and classification of organisms, it is known as taxonomy. So it is known as taxonomy. It is just the scientific classification of organisms based on their similar characteristics.
Hey Lapo, I know that you've been enjoying this wonderful video and most likely you've been enjoying watching this handsome face in front of you, but sorry ladies, I'm taken. I just here to tell you that Educate is on the road to 100,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. So please click the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you get notifications whenever I post new videos. I want you guys to pass. Okay, so if you make my dream true, I reach 100k subscribers, I will make your dreams come true. I will even get you to varsity. I will get you with 7 distinctions. Yes.
And then 1.10 says the microorganisms that can only reproduce inside a host. Okay, so the key term here, it can only reproduce inside the host. So the microorganisms that we have done so far, we've done viruses, we've done bacteria, we have done protists, we've done fungi as well. So basically, of those 4 microorganisms that we have done, one of them can only reproduce inside a host. What does this mean when you say that it reproduces inside a host? It simply means that it needs to be inside the body of something else so that it can reproduce and multiply. Okay, so if you actually take out that microorganisms from the body of something else, it cannot survive. For example, coronavirus can only survive and reproduce while it is inside the body of a human being. So the viruses are the ones that can only produce inside a host. Okay, so if you were to take out a virus into the outer environment, it would not reproduce. It would not be able to multiply and become many. Okay, but basically the moment it enters the body, either of a human being, of an animal, or anything, that is the host. Okay, that is the host. So basically we say that those are known as viruses. So the microorganisms that produce inside a host are known as viruses. So a host is just basically a body, a body in which that microorganisms reproduce. And then now 1.11 says whip-like structure that is used by bacteria for movement. So a whip-like structure that is used by bacteria for movement. Remember that we have got bacteria. Let's just say this is our bacteria. It has got something that looks like a tail, something like this. So these things that look like a tail on a bacterium, they are used for movement, or they are used for locomotion. A bacterium, it is able to move from one place to another just because we've got these things that looks like a tail of a bacteria. So these things are known as the flagella in plural, but if it is one, we are going to use flagella. So the flagella of a bacterium, it is the one that is responsible for movement of a bacterium within a certain fluid. Okay, then now they say a bacterium, the bacterium type which is spherical. So remember that when we name bacteria, we name them based on their shapes. Okay, so basically we've got a spherical shaped bacteria. So if the bacterium, it is spherical shaped, or it is a sphere like shape, we say it is known as the coccus bacteria. So this is known as the coccus. If it is a rod shape, meaning something like this, we say that it is known as a what? It is known as a bacillus bacteria. And then if it is a comma shaped, something like this, we say that it is known as a vibrio bacterium. So in this case, they now say the bacterium type that has got a spherical shape, we say that it is a coccus bacteria. So coccus, it is the word that we use. So it means that it has got a sphere shape, a sphere-like shape. It looks like a ball, kind of. So we name bacterium, or we classify them based on their shapes. Then 1.13, it says the substances that are used to stimulate the production of antibodies. So we're looking at the substances that are used to stimulate the production of antibodies. Remember that your body produces antibodies so that they can attack or fight some infection, okay? So that they can attack or fight some pathogens within the body. For example, right now, if I have got flu, let's just say I've got influenza virus within my body. It means that I've got flu, I'm coughing and whatnot. The moment I go and get a certain substance, my body will produce antibodies, okay? It's a form of acquired immunity, all right? And then this is known as the what? The substances that stimulate the production of antibodies. These are vaccines, okay? So we use vaccines to be able to stimulate our body to produce antibodies so that they can attack or fight the virus. To fight whatever that is inside, whatever microorganisms that is inside. So we use a vaccine in form of an injection, of course. And then we go to 1.14. 1.14 now says the mass of fungal threads. Remember that when we've got fungi, basically a fungi has got these threads, something like this, okay? Something that I cannot draw properly, but these are threads that are found inside a what? That are found inside a fungi. So the threads of a fungi, remember that they are known as the hyphae. So each and every single thread is known as the hyphae. But if we have got a collection or a mass of these fungal threads, we say it is known as the mycelium. Okay. So if we just combine all these small threads of a fungus, these small threads of a fungus, they are known as the mycelium. If they are combined together, it's mycelium. Okay, it's mycelium. So we say that the collection or the mass of fungal threads or threads in a fungus, this is known as the mycelium. And then we go to 1.15. It says now an acquired immunity obtained through injection. Remember that when we are injecting you, we are trying to stimulate your body so that it can produce antibodies. So that form of acquired immunity, the one that we obtain through injection, is still a vaccine as well. I think vaccine, it still sorts for 1.15 as well. So 1.18 and 1.15 looks like they've got the same biological term. Yeah, but it's reasonable. Substances that are used to stimulate the production of antibodies, those are vaccines indeed, definitely. Okay, and then at the same time, acquired immunity obtained through injection, yes, it's still vaccines as well. Okay, we'll just try to clear. If there's a mistake, I'll definitely write. I'll just pin a comment below. But basically, vaccines, it makes sense for both the questions. Then 1.16 says a parasitic protozoan. Okay, so here it says a parasitic protozoan that causes malaria. So basically, remember that malaria is one of the diseases that is transmitted by an Anopheles mosquito. So most of the times they say avoid getting bit by mosquitoes, because mosquitoes, they can actually transmit to you some malaria. So the protozoan basically is a protist. Remember that the kingdom protist, it is the one that is responsible for causing malaria. So there is that protozoan. There's that protozoan that is a microorganism that causes malaria, and we say it is known as the Plasmodium vivax. Okay, so the protist or the protozoan that causes malaria is known as Plasmodium vivax. So Plasmodium vivax is just a protist. It's a type of a protist, and it is parasitic. But we don't say it's a protist per se. We say it's a protozoan for God knows whatever English say it. Yeah, but basically Plasmodium vivax, it is a protozoan that causes malaria. And remember that protozoan, it is carried by the Anopheles mosquito. It's a female mosquito that carries the protozoan that causes malaria. Then we go to 1.17. So 1.17 now says a relationship between two organisms where both the organisms benefit. Remember that we have got three types of symbiotic relationships. We have got mutualism, we have got a parasitism, we also have got the other one. So basically, when we are having two organisms having a relationship, but no, not really the relationships that you guys have like humans, but basically, organisms, they can have relationships between each other, and that relationship benefits both the organisms. So it means there is no organism that cannot benefit from the association. So we say that is known as a mutual relationship, or it is mutualism. It's a form of a symbiotic relationship between two organisms where both of them get to benefit. The other one, it is parasitic. It means that the other one is benefiting, but the other one is getting harmed. Okay. Then 1.18. an inborn ability to produce antibodies. Remember basically that as humans we have got an inborn ability. Inborn simply means it's something inherent or something natural, something that it is that you are born with, basically inborn, right? So an inborn ability to produce antibodies. So the ability that each and every human being has as they are born to produce these antibodies to fight infection, we say it is known as immunity. We say it's known as immunity. For example, when you just get a cold right now, let's just say you get some flu and you are coughing, you just realize that even if you don't drink some pills, after 5 days you will not you won't be feeling the flu and whatnot. Okay, it is because the body can actually heal itself. Okay, it has got an inborn ability to produce antibodies that are able to fight some infection naturally. So thank you so much for watching this wonderful video, Prematriculations. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to also stay tuned.